You're listening to Interchain FM, the Cosmos radio station. If you're seeking alpha in the cosmos, look no further. I'm your host, Django Unchained. We're here with Talus, with Mike, the CEO, and Ben, the COO. They're an AI project who's using IBC. So I'm excited to learn about what you guys are building. Welcome.
Thank you, Django. Finally, we made it happen. Really excited to be here and talking about AI agents, IBC, and what would enable AI agents to be interoperable between the multi-chain world.
Totally.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Django.
Let's start with your backgrounds. You guys are new to the show, so let's have you guys tell me where you started in crypto and how you got here to building Talus.
I have a background in industrial engineering and did a master's then in applied data science. And I got really excited about, well, I come from Panama, and here, like, not everybody has a bank account or a credit card. When I heard about DeFi or like blockchains and permissionless systems, I got really excited because anybody could just, without, no matter the background, no matter what they do, no matter who they are, they could just invest, trade, transact freely without any restrictions. And it got me excited because I initially thought that I would bring all these technologies back home and build a stronger, more robust financial system. That is in itself pretty hard now that I'm realizing. But then started researching, started realizing what are the best problems to solve, or the biggest problems to solve right now. And I realized that AI agents have a huge potential in this current economy. Because they'll be able to do stuff for you, they'll be able to transact, they'll be able to eventually buy stuff for you, or even just represent yourself as like a digital entity or within the digital world. And there's a pretty big problem in Web 2 right now, which is like it's not composable, it's not interoperable. You cannot have agents like pay and transact with one another. And then if you're using like Alexa or like Google Assistant, there's no way of like combining them together to make a stronger entity to do work for users or be your assistant. And it's where I think like blockchains really came in as a platform where it's permissionless. It's any application or anything that you develop is composable. You could easily like see how APIs are constructed, and nobody would like restrict your access to those APIs. And then you have like wallets, digital assets that could transact for you. And then this is how like we envision Talus as being like as an L1 specifically built for on-chain AI agents.
Ben, give us your background.
My name is Ben Frijon. I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. I got into crypto same time as a lot of people, DeFi summer, when everything was ripping and it was super interesting.
Is that the era of 2021 hot dog coins and base and all that?
Well,
Pickle finance?
2020 was the OG DeFi summer, and then 21 is when things started getting silly. So I was always kind of into Bitcoin, like going back to high school, but learned about
going back to high school. How young are you? Like
mid-20s? I'll tell you what, I didn't buy enough. I can tell you that.
Sure.
That was a grave error. But
no one bought enough. No one ever buys enough.
But I got always knew what Bitcoin was since high school, but didn't really know what Ethereum was. And so I came into DeFi summer when a lot of the new L1 projects were popping up, and really fell in love with research. I love researching in the space and learning about new projects and new technologies. And around that same time, got into entrepreneurship and thought that was super interesting, and knew that I wanted to not have a real job. I wanted to work in startups. And so I was the president of my school's blockchain club. I co-designed a class on NFTs, first credit-bearing course on NFTs anywhere in the United States and anywhere in the world, actually, I think. We looked that up. And we designed that in the fall of 2021 and then taught it in spring 2022 when NFTs were straight red candle down, and they haven't been back since. So that was certainly a cool experience. And but I graduated, worked on a few projects after that, and then was a VC for a bit at Distributed Global. And then end of last year, decided I wanted to go back to being a builder. And I met Mike, and we had a lot of discussions about what would be a cool thing to build with Move, because we both thought that the Move language was incredibly powerful. We knew that the combination of crypto and AI, there would be a crypto AI project that would just be killer. Like there's some use case in combining those three things that would really set the world on fire and make a difference. And we looked at it of every element of AI to see where the opportunity was. In compute, there's a very clear opportunity in decentralizing compute, particularly inference, right? Because it can run on home hardware, for instance, or with data. There's a lot of projects that are working to decentralize data, create data provenance, data labeling, data scraping, that kind of thing. IP. And then the use case that we found that we felt really strongly about, that you couldn't do with Web 2 Rails or with TradFi Rails, and that we didn't see anyone else working on, was AI being able to buy stuff for you. I think that's a really simple unlock, not an easy unlock, but a simple unlock to understand. That would be the next big thing for AI, right? Generative AI is very cool, that you can ask ChatGPT a question and it'll answer it for you. But the next cool thing would be if you could have AI do commerce for you, or control your experience in DeFi. And so that's what Talus is trying to solve.
Right. Inherent in that thesis is that in the future, all of our wallets will be hooked up to autonomous AI agents that are going to be able to spend freely from it and do things with an integrated digital currency experience.
I think even more generally than that, the humans' experience with technology right now is very involved. So if you don't have your phone in your hand, or you're not sitting in front of your computer, work doesn't get done, right? So I kind of see the advent of AI agents as being like the introduction of electricity, and how that changed human beings' relationship with energy. Whereas before the Industrial Revolution, a huge part of your day would have been around producing energy, right? Collecting firewood, or chopping wood for burning biofuels, right? And after that, electricity saves human beings a lot of time, right? You don't have to chop firewood, you don't have to collect water and do all this stuff that we used to have to do. I think AI agents are going to be the same thing, where if you are not sitting in front of your computer, you don't have your phone in your hand, a lot of stuff gets done, and it's going to free up a lot of time for people and really improve people's experience in relationship with technology.
I want to add something to what Ben just said. It's like we've always strived to be more efficient and more autonomous, or at least like save the most amount of work that we can. Like the machines were the first version of that. The computer is also an iteration where like, okay, everything's like much easier. You could just like do a lot more with less. But I think the AI agents are kind of like the holy grail, where not only will you have like an entity that does it for you, but it would even like be able to think outside the box and consider things that you might not even think about or realize to accomplish more. And then like, as you said, like you add in like wallets, right? Like now you have like models that they just like provide the inputs and the outputs, and you could read and like it could create a plan for you or like strategize. But being able to actually act and actually do things with other tools or other integrations is where I think like the majority of the value and the customizability will really come from, and where developers will really be able to take advantage of.
Tangibly, what's an example application that a user would be able to use this for? For instance, if you're saying you could automate away a lot of the grind work, the mundane stuff that people may or may not want to deal with, what sort of application would that even look like?
One example that I think that's really easy to think about, it's like, okay, if you want to make a pretty complex DeFi transactions, like a pretty end-to-end complex DeFi transaction, like how long does it take you? Like you have to look into at least like 3 or 4 websites if you want to interact with like more than one protocol. You have to first like understand the protocol. You have to like discover what it is, what it does, how it works. You have to like work with your wallet. Maybe if you're like going from one chain to the other, you have to use multiple wallets or multiple like bridging interfaces. I think that the biggest, or at least one of the ways that AI agents will add a lot of value is in this specific use case where like you could directly abstract all these complexities for users, where the agent could understand all the protocols, understand all the websites, understand or at least have access to all your wallets. And then you could just like type in one single query or one single request, and the agent would have like all the coded language to be able to transcribe that into actionable items and execute for you, whether it's DeFi or SocialFi or GameFi. Yeah, I think like the UX abstraction and making it simpler for users is where like the majority of the value will come from.
Before we go there, just to help me get a gauge about where we are in the AI development space, you're explaining solving a UX problem. Conventionally, when solving UX problems, we would think that the developers and the people building these protocols themselves are the ones who are going to solve it for the user, such that once the entire technology stack matures and interoperability just becomes a given, and we let's say we don't need to manually build these bridges anymore, and we have standardization and all of that, and then we have an actual Web3 interconnected internet of blockchains. You're saying that you're coming at that problem by using AI to solve it. And so my question is, which is actually going to be real sooner?
The main problem with standardization is that like people, okay, let's say there's like 15 standards. Somebody else comes and says, oh, I have a new standard. Now you have 11 standards.
Well, I'm more generally speaking, I'm talking about there's a time function where there's a market, like a free market, where eventually over time we discover which protocol is best and we converge upon that. Like what happened from Web 1 to Web 2. It's just going to happen. I'm not saying how it's going to happen, but usually there's a period of Cambrian explosion of protocols, and then it converges because the free market basically decides on it. And so I'm saying that's going to happen. It's going to take a long time for it to happen. And my question is, which one is faster?
So I think we're talking about two different things. One is like standardization, and the other is being able to like identify the correct route. Even though if you have like one standard that like interacts with multiple protocols and it's like the one that everybody uses, you still need to figure out how to get the most profitable trade among all protocols. Let's say IBC. We chose IBC because we believe that AI agents should have the ability to like interoperate within multiple ecosystems and take advantage of other opportunities that exist in places outside of Talus. Once IBC is implemented, it could take 1 year or 10 years in like as a standard of like blockchain interoperability. I don't think it really matters whether it's like there's one standard or many standards, but like the power of AI agents will really come from the ability of like finding the best route, no matter the standard that they use, because they could learn it really quick and they could easily abstract the complexity without having the human to go and read and see how it implements into another smart contract.
So you're saying that technology exists now and AI agents can already reason about all these different DeFi protocols and the bridges, and it's just able to work now?
In a guarded way. It has guardrails in terms of like security, because you don't want agents like just going rogue and executing whatever. Yes, like AI agents now, or at least like very specific models, have the capability to understand different protocols or different primitives and interact with them. We could get into more details, but I think that there's going to be a limit, or at least depending on like the context window that these AI agents could handle at the same time, how many protocols you could like bake in and have the agent like understand like a wide variety. But I do think like if you could, let's say for example, like train one model to understand IBC and then like another model to understand Hyperlane, or another model to understand Union's bridging mechanism, and then use those different models as tools and orchestrate them into like agent clusters that could execute and learn from multiple avenues. I do think that is like easily solvable right now.
So let's bring it back to Talus. What is Talus solving and how does it fit into your overarching thesis?
I would describe Talus as three different things at a high level. First of all, we've built a chain and we use the Move VM and the Move language to create the most performant execution stack possible. Second of all, we've created an agent SDK to make it as easy as possible to create as positive DevX as possible to build and deploy agents hosted in our environment. And then third, we've created, and as part of our AI stack, what is effectively a Web3 AI API. And the concept is that AI is this computationally intensive thing that's running off-chain. You can run it off-chain and have that be centralized however you want, but the outputs of AI should be able to make its way onto Talus. So you can have inferences, for instance, ported and represented to Talus as native objects in Move. That's pretty much it. Talus is a blockchain. We've created a framework to create and deploy agents based on a lot of the existing Web 2 frameworks. There's a lot agentic frameworks. There's a lot of them. We've created a way for you to run AI off-chain, create an output, and then have that output represented on Talus to influence some sort of on-chain agentic workflow. So the AI happens off-chain. We receive the outputs of AI, and they influence some sort of on-chain activity.
What is the purpose of the outputs going on-chain? Is it to prove that the AI ran something?
Yeah, so that you can influence some sort of agentic workflow, however you want to define that. So, for instance, if you wanted to run a trading strategy that was controlled by an LLM, but have the trading be on-chain, then you could be running AI off-chain. You could be generating directives, have them put onto Talus to influence whatever agentic workflow you want, whether it's buy at this price, and then having an LLM like constantly recalculating a historical moving average price, right, for some set of price data. And then your on-chain activity could be swing trading the mean reversion. So like if within this time window, this LLM that I have says that the price of Bitcoin should be 60,000. Then every time price diverts above the moving average that I calculate, I open a short position. Every time it goes below, then I open a long position. And then that exact average price gets dynamically adjusted.
Is this all done via DEXs, or does it actually have the capability of doing these tradings on sexes, as well as even be intelligent enough to, open puts and calls and create really complex strategies?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So all of the trading that Talus influences, whether it's on Talus or on another chain, will be on chain. So it'll use DEXs, it'll be decentralized. And you brought up a good point, which is that could we incorporate something like centralized exchanges? Trading bots already exist like all over crypto. In fact, in TradFi, like most of the trading in TradFi, most of the trading on the NASDAQ, for instance, is already AI, right? It's HFT, however you want to describe that. There are Telegram bots that just use the Binance API, right? They're doing something very similar, except they're using a centralized exchange. So why is it important that we bring this agentic workflow on-chain and onto Talus?
We interrupt this podcast to make an important announcement. Our Celestia validator is coming online soon. If you would like to support Entertain FM, the best way to do it is by delegating to our validator. Now, back to the show.
First of all, I think there's value in transparency and verifiability. If you directed AI to do something, then you can verify on chain that it acted in a certain way. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, why does it makes sense when I explain this to people that AI would use crypto, right? Because it makes sense for AI to want to use an asset that lives on a distributed ledger that anybody can view balances, right?
Naturally.
Right. But why does the trading itself need to be on chain, right? Why couldn't you just give AI access to a wallet, for instance? Well, for the same reason that we needed crypto payments in the first place, and that's composability, right? The biggest unlock for crypto over and for DeFi over TradFi is not execution, right? It's not like anyone in this entire space has accomplished anything close to the execution that they get in HFT. What's cool is that you have composability because the actors who are trading and the assets which they transact live on a common data substrate. And that's Talus. So the agents themselves and the assets they transact will be recorded on Talus as a ledger. And in doing this, we can have composability. So let's say you create an agent today using an existing Web 2 framework, like something really simple using the Stripe API. And it was just a buy agent, like buy this thing. It could be like on Amazon or something like that. Good luck. It wouldn't be able to do anything because it would be single use because it wouldn't be able to interact with any other agents. If we all three of us created an agent like that using the Stripe API, there would be no way for our agents to communicate. So we envision a world where agents are interoperable with each other and they're able to communicate, collaborate, trade against each other. And that's the vision that we have for Talus. And we can do that because the agents and the assets they transact live on a common data layer.
The other thing is that you could also like think about agents as assets themselves or as services, where like a developer comes and creates an agent, he could like sell it, he could even like trade the agent, he could like speculate against the agent. And these things are like very, very difficult to mimic in Web 2, mostly because you don't have like the trustlessness and like the verifiability that what the agent says that it will do will eventually happen.
Okay. Help me understand why there needs to be a blockchain middle layer such as Talus in order for this to work. Because I would imagine that you could do this already with the tools that exist without a blockchain. It sounds like the Talus network is more of like you're just proving that these agentic AI agents have done some work that you tasked it to do.
So it's not only, yes, like your point is right, like you want to have an ecosystem of agents that are able to interact and transact and talk to one another in a trustless and verifiable way. I don't think that it's easily doable in any other blockchain. Specifically because they lack.
No, I'm not saying it's doable on a blockchain. I'm saying that you could run AI agents to run some task completely off chain while using it to leverage the existing blockchain networks and applications on top of them.
Yeah. I understand your question, right? So there's like a sliding scale. Anytime you tackle one of these issues, there's like a sliding scale of what can be on chain. You could have everything on chain, like if you're a fully on chain maxi, or you could have like the lightest possible like Web 2 product that just uses Circle Pay or something.
And like which camp are you in? Which camp do you belong to?
We're somewhere in the middle. Because what's different about Talus? Like I said, we don't think that AI needs to run on chain. There are a lot of projects that are working on like decentralized model training. A lot of them are our partners, and that's commendable. I think that's really, really difficult. Or if you were bringing inferences on chain and verifying the inference, right, and putting that through consensus, that's also commendable. But I think that's really, really difficult to implement.
But also, why is that needed?
Exactly.
Why does there need to be consensus around whether or not some kind of inference happened and to make that immutable on chain?
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's not what we're doing. What we're doing and what we think is really important that's on chain is the agentic workflow itself, right? So the series of steps that the agent takes to get from point A to point B. And the reasons for that are, first of all, that you have transparency into the actions of the agent, right? One of the biggest complaints about AI today is that users have no idea, right, what AI is running in the background. They don't know the steps that are being taken. So I think there's value in adding transparency to agentic workflows, especially if AI is going to be buying stuff for you, right? That takes an incredible amount of trust, with users. If they're going to put their funds at risk with an agent, there needs to be some sort of transparency there. And then second of all, because the agent is on chain, right? Agents that live on the same data layer can interact with each other in a way that they couldn't if the agents were off chain. So in the example that I gave, if all three of us created an agent using an existing agentic framework like Crew AI or something like that, or Autogen, and we use the Stripe API to give it access to funds, the agent would be single use. You would be able to like ping this one activity, like buy this or sell this. you would not, especially with the resources available to like an individual developer, right? Our agents would not be able to collaborate or interact with each other, trade with one another, do anything because they don't live on a common data layer, right? The reason we think it's important that the agents and the agentic workflows live on chain is because we want agents to be able to collaborate with each other. Okay. So I give a really simple example of like a swing trading agent that we've conceptualized. In the future, agents are going to be trading against each other. They're going to be interacting with each other to complete agentic workflows. They're going to route through each other. Like if it would be more efficient to route through this agent over this agent, then the agents will be able to switch workflows. That's why it's important to have agents on Talus.
So you made an important point. It's that in my mind, I took it for granted that there are going to be AI agents crawling all over the blockchains that are online and eventually trading, right? And you're saying that a key part of the stack that enables this is that the AI agents themselves need to live on chain in order for them to access the value that's being transferred across this entire network.
Well,
Right.
So not really, because eventually you could have like I could have my agent interacting through my wallet with a blockchain, and then you could do the same. But how are those two agents talking to one another in a trustless way? Like it won't like you need to have like a bridge that connects them together, where they could actually speak and plan and transact. If you were to do, as Ben was saying like before, like if you would try to do this in the Web2 world, you would have to basically create like an interface for these agents to like transact, and then if the Stripe API itself like just gets rate limited, you're out, and you wouldn't be able to do anything about it. So by like putting agents directly on chain and like having the traceability of what they do, how they do things, you could not only like recognize what another agent is doing, but you could also like attach that into your same workflow and compose it with your agent itself.
Based on everything that we've talked about, it sounds like the killer application for AI agents on chain is still trading. It's now who can get the fastest, smartest AI agent on chain to trade on their behalf and outcompete the other AI agent that is also on the Talus network.
It could be trading. The way that we view it initially is that it will be just abstracting complexity, improving UX, right? Like the example that Mike gave of, like a swap, for instance. How could an agent conduct a cross-chain swap that would eliminate a user having to take so many steps and have such a bad user experience moving between chains? So that would be an example of something that Talus will be building initially. It's important to remember what is cool about blockchains and like what blockchains enable. You don't necessarily get the best execution compared to TradFi, right? So like HFT is probably going to be faster than any blockchain solution for the time being. Anything that's replicating execution is not going to be as fast as like what's going on the NASDAQ. But what is really cool, like I said, is you get composability across these workflows. So Talus is an open design space. Whatever people want to build, we're going to support. We've built some great developer tools to create these agents with our agent SDK. I think that it's really up to our community and up to developers. I do know that value transfer necessitates a blockchain because of the reasons I mentioned, that you want composability, you want verifiability, and you want and transparency, and you want a permissionless environment, right? You don't want to be have platform risk or be shut out using Web2 rails. So we're going to support our developer community, whichever direction it goes.
Okay, so you're basically doing developer acquisition now for the developers themselves to build these AI agents on Talus. That's who you're okay. So let's take this to its logical conclusion. Pretend it's 10 years from now. Talus is a mature network and we have AI agents on chain doing their thing. At what point is there going to be a really, really smart, like let's say GPT's like, in its 20th iteration, it's really smart and it's able to do really complex trading on chain. So it's like it's able to create basically trading strategies that would be no different than what a commodities OTC desk would do today. Is that somewhere in the future? And do you think that they're just going to replace all the financial managers? And do you think that there will be some sort of singularity where all these AI agents who are talking to each other just say, why don't we just converge into like the collective AGI consciousness, and we'll just accrue all the value ourselves to ourselves and start, because we have all this money, so we could just pay humans.
I think you just answered the question yourself right there and predicted the future.
So I do think I have like a vision for that. Like, I don't think it's going to be like one GPT-23 that's going to like have all the intelligence. I think it's going to be like a combination of like multiple models working together. And if we make them be sovereign, which is one of like the value propositions of Talus, it's like, okay, just have AI agents be as sovereign as like smart contracts. It is probable that like eventually we'll just have like an AI agent that does more money than humans and controls our lives. It sounds like pretty dystopic, but I think it's a very probable future. And the more that we think about it, the more we're heading in that direction. We just need to have like the right guardrails in place and the right frameworks for humans to remain in control. But this is like, it can get like really philosophical.
Yeah, I can't.
I don't want to get into Isaac Asimov and Heinlein and all that, but to answer your question about trading, like the reason why I don't talk about trading explicitly when it comes to Talus, although I think there's going to be a lot of that. I think there's going to be a lot of agents trading against each other. We envision things like trading competitions, and there being a lot of exciting activity happening on Talus between on-chain agents. Is because, like I said, the trading in TradFi is like totally different, and like the most advanced trading in crypto happens on centralized exchanges, right? It's stuff that that like Jump is doing on whatever, on Binance or whatever. Like anything that happens on chain, but there are still like some very sophisticated trading that happens on chain. It's just different. Like you're not going to get as good execution as in TradFi. You're making a trade-off for composability, and permissionlessness. So and then on trading strategies, you mentioned AI specifically. There's like only a few trading strategies that work, and the point of a market is that it always reaches some sort of equilibrium around, like, if you have this advantage or arbitrage, like that window gets closed in just a few years. This happens in TradFi as well, right? You'll see like some HFT firm has a really closely guarded secret with this algo that they developed, and it's proprietary, and like it works for 5-6 years and then it stops working, right? Unless you're Renaissance or something like that. And you just really are smarter than everyone. So I think, like I said, we're going to try to support whatever our developer community wants to do. I think there will be a lot of trading in the sense that there's trading competitions on Binance. I think that will happen on Talus. I just want to emphasize exactly what the advantages of having an agentic workflow on chain are, right? It's not necessarily that it's going to be like money never sleeps on Talus, right? You're getting permissionlessness, you're getting verifiability and transparency, and you're getting composability with trading. It's not necessarily like going to be the NASDAQ on chain. Even though I do want to work toward that future. I do want to work toward a future where blockchains are fast enough where we can sync state at the speed of light, and like arbitrage around the world in like two different markets gets closed as quickly as possible because everything lives on a common data layer. I'm really optimistic in that future. But
is it physically possible?
Yeah. I mean, unless
we aggregate all the data centers and then have those run the same.
But it would
network.
would syncing 100 data centers would be faster than just one?
One of the
You would
key
need some kind of virtualization layer.
you need that's where like geographical distribution comes into play, and like your odds of being co-located to a validator to a block builder are really, really important when you're getting into the margins like that, and you're talking about stuff like slot to ping and all of that. So that's the end goal, right? Is that you synthesize data as quickly as possible. Like if you have this advantage in a market around the world, then the entire network reaches consensus at the speed of light, because that's how fast your consensus is, and you have multiple proposers running in parallel at the same time, switching at the speed of light. You know, that's like the end state of blockchains.
I don't know if I agree with that. I think that's the end state of AI for sure. But not necessarily blockchains.
How are you throwing AI into that? Like,
well, because it totally makes sense to aggregate all the data centers to be running AI for that. It's like an aggregating force for all of them across the world to run one single distributed ledger. Blockchains are inherently decentralized. You could spin up another node to run any blockchain. I don't see there being incentive for
let me say that's like the advantage of blockchains over tradfi, is that you can like propagate data faster, or you can
yeah, but that's to run like one blockchain network. I don't, there's not going to be like,
yeah, exactly. I was describing something Bitcoin a little bit more. Yeah. So something a little bit more like for a general purpose L1, like Solana or something like that.
Yeah. But you're stuck at the speed of execution and having to put that on chain and archiving the data. It's too heavy. Let's talk about the token. So tell me about the tokenomics. Yeah. Is there an airdrop? Give me the alpha.
No, so our what we've been envisioning, and it's still in the works because it can get complex really fast about our token. It's like we want to create the native token to be not only an incentivization mechanism for the growth of the ecosystem and the deployment and performance of AI agents, but also to be the currency of AI. And this way is like we envision a future where, like, as you said, like AI agents are going to be everywhere, and like Talus is going to be the main place where these AI agents run. So like people would want to have the Talus native token to pay for the usage of these AI agents. And I think that's where like the majority of the demand will come from, and the supply would come obviously from like the amount of AI agents that exist in the ecosystem, like the models, the data, and the compute that you could purchase with that same token.
So at what point can my Talus AI agent directly convert my USD into Talus coin so that I could start using the network?
That'll be the first thing we focus on.
Great.
Yeah, stable coins and agents, I think, are going to be huge.
When airdrop, assuming there is one.
I'm going to answer only the one mainnet question. We're aiming to launch pretty soon, ideally some point in Q1. Stay tuned. A lot of work ahead, and we're pushing at the edge of innovation on the on-chain AI agent side of things.
Any other closing thoughts before we wrap up?
Stay tuned, join our community. If things go well, our V1 of our agentic framework should have already been launched to some teams and some initial community developers to start building AI agents on Talus. I think it's like the first of its kind. We're just starting to see this kind of like AI primitive, which is like an on-chain AI agent, come to life. So really excited to what use cases developers build and what experiments actually start happening in Talus. I invite everybody, just like reach out if you want to chat, if you want to like brainstorm ideas. More than happy to like onboard you into the platform and just build with you.
One final question. So if I'm Renaissance or any organization that wants to have some proprietary AI algo running on this in order to extract maximally from these blockchain networks, where would that logic sit? Is it on chain and open source, or because I'm trying to have an edge, right? Where is it?
we are planning on being like credibly neutral. Like we'll plan to support OpenAI's API or like Google's Gemini API, or if you would just want to be like a
Okay, so they're not actually publishing those contracts on Talus.
So
or the logic rather.
There's like an instance representation of the contract where it says, okay, this API is getting, or this like node is getting serviced by XYZ model. And then like there's like a crypto economic stake where like if you don't provide the right outputs, like or like it's not verifiable, like you lose the economic stake. But you could basically like connect any type of compute or any type of model to the network and then offer it. And then people decided if they want to trust you or not based on the economic guarantees.
Thanks for coming on the podcast and sharing the alpha. I look forward to your mainnet launch.
Thank you, Chango. Appreciate
Chango.
it.